Okay, this is now, I think it's episode 7 of Analytical Astrology. And this episode is going to be it's back to Julia, or Julie, and her travelling. Because if you remember from earlier episodes, she crisscrossed back and forth across the United States, living in Colorado and California and then Texas and now back to, I think it's Virginia. And so we're going to look at her 9th house and get some idea of why she travelled around so much, why she moved so much. Look at also another meaning of the 9th house, which is our philosophy, and see what we can do with that. Because I think the philosophy idea in some ways is more interesting than, well, not more interesting, but it is, I think, very interesting to look at the 9th as philosophy. So if you remember Julia, we have, looking at the chart, 24 degrees of Taurus on the 9th house cusp. Right, and we know that Taurus is a fixed sign, and fixed signs don't change. That's something I was taught, and some people argue with me, but I stick to the fact that fixed signs don't change, they don't learn, and I think you're stuck with that, and we ought to understand that. I read a blog a few days ago where somebody was writing about spontaneity and how people with mutable planets are very spontaneous, whereas fixed planets aren't. And I don't know about that, because spontaneity, I think, relates more to cardinal signs. I don't know about mutable signs being particularly spontaneous, which is like a sudden, for no good reason, no apparent reason, doing something that you wouldn't maybe normally do. We can discuss that later, but anyway. So we've got fixed sign up here, and we might look at the Taurus on the 9th and figure that's one strong indication that Julia is not going to move that much, right? Because it's fixed. Okay. At the same time, though, Taurus we know is ruled by Venus, and we have Venus down here at 27 Sagittarius. Right, and then it's 27 Virgo rising, 27 Pisces, and 27 Gemini. So, why does Julia move around so much? And is it because the ruler of the 9th, okay, it happens to be fixed, but if we remember too, it's the Capricorn decanate on the 9th, and Capricorn's a cardinal sign. And Saturn, we're going to find, is down here at 29, I think it is. 29 Capricorn, which is also a cardinal sign. So we have fixity on the 9th by sign, but we've got cardinal, which changes quickly. It's a cardinal decanate, and the ruler is in its own sign, and it's a cardinal sign as well. But the fact that we have Taurus in the 9th ruled by Venus. Venus also rules the ascendant by decanate, because that's a Taurus decanate of Virgo. And we discussed that before. So we've got a connection between the self and travel. And there's one thing to mention is that, and we've got this very close aspect between the conjunction with the 4th house cusp and the square to the ascendant and descendant. So the angles are mutable. But maybe what we should be learning is that, okay, there's a fixed sign in the 9th, but the ruler is in a mutable sign, and mutable angles. So there's restlessness about Julia throughout her entire life because it's the angles. And so maybe we take the sign of the cusp as point number 1, but in this case, or it can easily be overtaken by a stronger setup, which in this case is the ruler being conjunct an angle, and the angles being all mutable as well. The other thing is, we've got Venus ruling the ascendant decanate, and therefore the ascendant, and the 9th. I happen to have I have Aries rising and Scorpio on the 8th. That's the self. That's my wife's income, for instance, the 8th being the 2nd from the 7th, so my wife's income. And so Mars rules the self, which is the ascendant, and the 8th. And so changes to my wife's income, the 8th, affect me. And that's not going to be the same for you. And it's not the same for Julia, because changes to her foreign travel affect Julia. Changes to my wife's income affect me. My brother-in-law, that I've mentioned before, has a Gemini midheaven and Virgo rising. So the 10th is business, the 1st is the self. So with him, changes with his business affect him. He doesn't particularly relate to his wife's values or the 8th or philosophy or travel. With him, it's the 10th and the ascendant that go together. So changes to, also the 10th is one of the parents. So changes with his mother, the 10th, affect him. Whereas, and I mention that at the moment partly because the mother's in hospital and she's kind of sick and she's 91 or 90. And so he's very concerned with and very involved with what's going on with the mother, whereas my wife isn't to the same extent for different reasons. And my sister-in-law and the other brother-in-law, they're not particularly involved, but it's the second child, the first boy, who has Gemini on the 10th and Virgo rising. One of the parents and the self go together. And that's something to be aware of, I think. So with Julia, she's got Taurus in the cusp and Venus conjunct the angle with mutable angles, I think indicating there's restlessness when it comes to foreign countries and when it comes to moving a distance from the place of birth. Plus the fact that Venus is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is the general significator of travel, right? So, and this is something that's brought up in Vivian Robson's Beginner's Guide to Practical Astrology, where he talks about general significators and particular significators. So Sagittarius is the general significator of travel, foreign travel. But you would look to the planet that rules the 9th, or the planets ruling the 9th by sign and by decade, for particular information about that individual's actual travelling, right? So that he talks about Libra being the general significator of marriage. So in a natal chart, you look to see where Libra is and if there are planets in Libra, and that'll give you a general idea about whether the person is predisposed to good or bad partnerships. But he says in a woman's chart, you look to the actual planet Mars and the Sun and see how they're positioned and what kind of shape they're in to get an idea of the kind of person, the actual person that the person is going to marry. And in a man's chart, you look to the Moon and Venus, the two feminine planets, to get specific details and information about the actual marriage partner. So Libra's general, Libra and planets in Libra will give you general information about what you can expect from marriage. But if you want to know who and the circumstances and the condition of the actual marriage partner, then you look to either feminine planets, the Moon and Venus, or masculine planets, the Sun and Mars, for details about the actual person. So just the fact that Julia has the ruler of the 9th in Sagittarius, which is a general significator of foreign travel, can be another reason why she moved instead of staying fixed in the place of birth, that you might take from Taurus, a fixed sign being in the 9th house cusp. Okay, Venus is in Sagittarius. We know Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter.